Imagine you open your eyes inside a cave. Outside, the world has disappeared. There is no more green. There is no more sound of the rivers. There is only an endless, silent white that has been falling for 23 days straight. You don't know if it will snow for another week. Or for another 2 months. Your stomach hurts. It's not ordinary hunger. It's that emptiness that starts to ache in your bones. You look at the people around you. Children wrapped in animal skins. An old man coughing near the fire. And the fire. The fire is weak because the firewood is running out, and if the firewood runs out, the cold doesn't kill quickly. It kills slowly. It steals the heat from your body hour after hour until you simply stop feeling. Now think, how did human beings without electricity, without modern clothes, without supermarkets, without weather forecasting, survive? Winters that lasted for months on end, trapped by snow, isolated from the world. The answer is not luck. It's one of the most impressive stories of intelligence in our species, and it starts with a simple question that will stay with you throughout the entire video. What would you do if winter had no end date? Before we continue, if you enjoy stories that take you back to prehistory, subscribe to the channel now, because this journey is just beginning, and it's going to get increasingly intense. The first thing you need to understand is this. Winter didn't take ancient humans by surprise. They knew he was coming, and they knew that when the snow covered everything, there would be no fruit, no easy-to-find roots, and no abundant game. So winter survival didn't begin in winter. She was starting months before. At the end of summer, as you imagine the scene in the icy cave, go back in time a little. Go back to autumn, because that's where the real battle begins. Silent, strategic, almost invisible. And it is there that the first great human genius resides. The ability to prepare for a future that has not yet arrived. Now imagine that you are no longer in the snow. You are weeks before it. The air is still cold but bearable. Leaves are falling. And there's a silent tension throughout the group. Because everyone knows, every day lost now is a guaranteed day of hunger later. This is the first great secret that archaeology has revealed about Paleolithic and Mesolithic humans. They did not survive the winter by enduring it. They survived not predicting. And the most powerful tool they possessed was neither a spear nor a stone knife. It was the collective memory. The Kisasi, oldest members of the group, carried in their minds the map of previous winters. They knew where the game hid when the snow arrived. They knew which plants stored energy in their roots. They knew, above all, how to preserve food for months without it spoiling. And here's something few people know. Evidence found at archaeological sites in Europe shows that human groups were already smoking meat, drying fish in the cold wind, and burying food in frozen holes in the ground, a veritable natural freezer, thousands of years before refrigerators existed. Think about that for a second. While you store food in a self-cooling refrigerator, they needed read the weather, wind, and ground temperature to do the same thing. What if they made a mistake in their calculation? The meat was rotting, and winter was beginning with the stock already compromised. Now imagine the pressure of that. You're carrying food into a cave, knowing that it could be the difference between your family living or not living until spring. There were no second chances. There was no such thing as, I'll deal with it later. There was only, prepare now, or suffer later. And it was precisely this pressure, constant, silent, relentless, that began to shape something greater than mere survival. He began to shape the human planning. But storing food only solved half the problem. Because when the snow finally arrived, and the world outside turned into a white and deadly desert, the second great enemy emerged. A silent enemy, one that made no noise, did not roar, did not pursue. He was just stealing her warmth minute by minute. And it is about this enemy that we are going to talk now. Imagine that the snow has finally arrived. And with it comes that chilling cold that makes your breath ache, that makes the air hurt inside your chest. Now you are inside the shelter. But inside doesn't mean safe, because the cold doesn't respect stone walls. It finds the cracks. It waits for you to fall asleep before acting. And here lies one of the biggest misconceptions we have about ancient humans, the idea that they merely endured the cold as if they were more resilient than us. That's a myth. The human body during the Ice Age was, biologically, almost identical to yours. The difference wasn't in resistance. It was in intelligence applied to survival. Traces found in Siberia, dating back more than 30,000 years, reveal something impressive. Extremely thin bone needles, used to sew tight-fitting clothing to the body. Not simply skins thrown on top, but true layered garments, similar in concept to what we use today in winter sports. Inner layer to retain heat, outer layer to block wind and moisture. They discovered in practice the same principle that thermal science uses today. It's not the thickness of the material that causes the heat. It's the air trapped between the layers. Now consider the stark difference. You can buy a thermal jacket in minutes. They had to hunt the animal, treat the hide, tan it, cut it, and sew it by hand, knowing that a mistake in the stitching could mean hypothermia weeks later. But clothes solved part of the problem. The other part, more urgent, more vital, was the fire. And here's a little-known fact. Keeping a fire burning throughout an entire winter was no easy task. It required real technical expertise. Human groups learned to use animal fat as a slow-burning fuel, mixed with dried bones, since wood was not always available under the snow. In some regions of Europe, archaeologists have found evidence that animal bones were used as firewood because their internal fat burned for hours. Think about it. They transformed food scraps into a source of heat. Nothing was wasted. Everything had a second purpose. While you adjust the thermostat with a touch, they had to feed the fire every few hours, throughout the entire night, taking turns keeping watch just for that. Because if the fire went out at midnight, it would only reignite in the morning. And a night without fire in the dead of winter could be someone's last night. But the cold brought yet another problem, one that was more silent and more dangerous than it seemed, because when the sun set early, and the days became as short as a blink of an eye, a new enemy emerged, the darkness. Now imagine it's only 4 in the afternoon, and it's already dark. The sun, which in summer seemed endless, now barely appears for a few hours, and when it disappears it takes the feeling of security with it, because in the dark everything changes. The sounds get louder, the shadows grow longer, and the human mind, programmed for millions of years to fear what it cannot see, begins to work against you. Now think, without electricity, without a flashlight, without any light other than fire, how would you fill hours and hours of darkness, every day for weeks on end? The answer lies in something you may never have imagined. It was during these long periods of darkness that some of humanity's earliest cultural expressions were born. Cave paintings, such as those found in Lascaux and Chauvet, France, date back to glacial periods, when human groups spent long months confined. Historians and archaeologists suggest that this forced time inside shelters may have spurred the development of art, symbolic language, and oral storytelling. Think about it. While you spend your free time scrolling, they spent their free time inventing stories, drawing on the walls, teaching the younger ones through speech. The darkness, which initially seemed like just a problem, also became a driving force for creation. But she carried another burden, even more silent: isolation. Because for weeks no neighboring group showed up, no exchanges, no news from outside. You were alone with the same 10, 20, 30 people day after day, in the same cramped space. And this tested something that has nothing to do with physical strength. It tested the human capacity to live together, share and cooperate. Groups that fought, that didn't know how to share food fairly, that let selfishness win, simply didn't survive the entire winter. In this case, natural selection did not choose only the strongest. I chose the most cooperative. But cooperation and creativity weren't enough if the body started to fail from the inside. And that is exactly what happened when a new, even more treacherous enemy entered the scene: the disease. Imagine that 30 days of snow have already passed. Your body is tired, your skin is dry, and a cough has begun to spread among the children in the group. There is no hospital, there is no manufactured medicine, there is absolutely no safety net beyond the knowledge that group carries in its memory. And here's a striking fact. Analyses of bones and teeth from Ice Age populations show signs of seasonal nutritional stress. In other words, biological markers that prove the human body suffered the same cycle of scarcity every year during the winter. This means something powerful. The human body from thousands of years ago, physically recorded, he survived each harsh winter, each line on a tooth, each mark on a bone, a biological scar of what that body endured. To deal with illnesses, ancient groups relied on knowledge passed down through generations. Plants with medicinal properties, preserved and stored specifically for the colder months when the body was more vulnerable. Traces of resin, bark, and herbs found at archaeological sites suggest practices for caring for wounds and infections that were far more sophisticated than previously imagined until a few decades ago. But the real remedy often wasn't a plant or another person. Caring for those who fell ill meant sharing one's own food, one's own warmth, one's own time. In the dead of winter, this came at a very high cost, and yet they did it, because a group that abandoned its sick members weakened itself. And a group that cared for its sick members, even with sacrifice, strengthened itself as a community. While you take a pill in seconds, they were betting their own survival to keep someone else alive. But even while caring for the sick, even while keeping the fire burning, a problem continued to grow, day after day, like a shadow behind it all. The food was running out. And out there, beneath the snow, there was still hope: hunt. But hunting in the middle of an extreme winter was almost a life-or-death experience. Now imagine you need to leave the shelter. Outside, the snow is knee-deep. The wind cuts your face like a blade. And somewhere beneath that endless whiteness, there's an animal that could feed your group for days. But there is a problem. You may not come back either. Hunting in winter was radically different from hunting in summer. The animals were scarcer, smarter and faster at escaping across the snow. And the human hunter, on the other hand, expended much more energy just to move across that icy terrain. Here's a little-known fact. Archaeological evidence shows that Paleolithic human groups developed primitive snowshoes made of interwoven branches and leather straps to distribute body weight and prevent sinking with each step. A design so efficient that, in essence, it is still used today. Furthermore, many groups began hunting in coordinated team, herding reindeer or wild horses and driving them into narrow areas such as gorges or natural snow traps. Required precise communication, absolute silence, and complete trust among group members. One timing error, and the entire hunt was lost. Worse, the energy wasted for nothing. And here's the most striking point. Every winter hunt was literally a survival calculation. The human body, exposed to extreme cold, can lose calories at an alarming rate, much faster than in mild climates. This means going out to hunt and find nothing. It wasn't just a disappointment. It was a real energy drain, which brought the group even closer to starvation. Therefore, many groups avoided unnecessary hunting and prioritized conserving energy as much as possible, sleeping more, moving less, and keeping their bodies warm at all times. Rest in this context was not laziness. It was a survival strategy. While you expend energy without even realizing it, taking the car, walking for comfort, they measured every movement like someone measuring ammunition in a war. And it is precisely there, in the midst of this constant pressure, hunger, cold, darkness, disease, risky hunting, that the human mind began to do something extraordinary. She started to think ahead. If you're feeling the weight of this journey so far, leave a like and comment below. Do you think you could survive a winter like this? This really helps the channel to continue bringing stories like this.